All right, we're live for another episode of Keeping It Real. I'm really excited today to have Tim Heyl, an Austin real estate agent. He's been kicking some butt, and the topic today is 3 million GCI business leveraging lead generation, and Tim's going to go ahead and share with us how he's able to get that and get on track to do 3 million this year. Tim, by the age of 27 last year, did approximately 2 million GCI in his business, and his goal this year is to do 3 million. So we're really excited to have him on. So for those of you just tuning in and you've never been here and you don't know who I am, I'm Jeff Manson. I'm a Hawaii real estate broker and founder of Real Geeks, and my co-host is Frank Klesitz. He's the CEO of Viral Marketing. And Frank, can you let them know how they can follow us if they're just tuning in?
Absolutely. So we created this landing page, this website called keepingitreal.com, and you can go on there and see all the replays of all the past events. They're fantastic. And then on there, there's a little opt-in. You put your email address in, you'll get notifications of live events and the replays. That's all we ever send them to. So you won't get any other emails from us other than those notifications. But also our YouTube channel. This goes right to the Real Geeks YouTube channel. You can subscribe on YouTube, and you can also subscribe on Google+. If you use Google+, you can check it out there. And we also post them to the Real Geeks Facebook page, the replays and the invites for live events. So you can go there and like and follow us there to get more.
All right, great. Thanks a lot. And anyway, like I said, we're having a special guest on, Tim, and he's from Austin, and he's got his little one there. Can you go ahead and introduce her, Tim?
Thanks for having us on, Jeff. This is Annabelle. She's actually in MAPS coaching right now. So
nice.
She's on her headset making calls, but she wanted to say hi. Her first debut on national television, Annabelle. Give him a wiggle, girl. Give him a wiggle.
Awesome. Hello.
She'll be over lead generating, so she'll be back later.
All right, great. Go have fun lead generating. I'm sure she really crushes it too. All right, so, hey Tim, thanks a lot for joining us. We're really excited to have you on here. And like I said, Tim's only 28 years old, and he's been in the business like 6 years, and he's crushing. He's got an awesome story, and we want to go in here and just jump right in. Tim, how did you start real estate, and can you take us through the beginning and how you got to the point where you are, to the point where you started leveraging the lead generation with a team?
Absolutely. So when I first started about 6 years ago, I was basically, I'm from Austin, Texas, and although I knew a lot of people here, I was 21 years old and basically didn't have a lot of confidence in going after my sphere of influence. I had a lot of limiting beliefs about what that would look like. And so I basically spent my time cold calling expireds. So for about 3.5 years straight, I was just prospecting the heck out of expireds. Fortunately for me, I got into the market when it was at the bottom, right? I got into the market when it was about as bad as it could get, and we had 40, 50 new expireds a day. So every day I'd come in and I'd have plenty to do. And about 3.5 years in, I was the #1 agent in my market. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I was prospecting for 4 hours without interruption. I was going on appointments in the afternoon, and I was trying to run the team meanwhile. And I was really, really failing at building and running the team. And so I realized that what I needed to do was I needed to either leverage the listing appointments or I needed to leverage prospecting. And because the nature of the appointments that we were setting at the time, that I was setting, the nature of those appointments, they were expired. So I was often up against 8 or 9 agents on any given appointment. So it wasn't a realistic thing for me to at the time to go and leverage the listing side and sit in the office and just make phone calls all day. I felt like I still needed to be out in the field closing those deals and making sure we were the ones getting the listings. So I hired a prospector. I hired a prospector, and it wasn't my first hire. You know, I had hired a couple of assistants to start out, and I hired a buyer's agent to take over the buyer deals. But I got to that point where I couldn't keep lead generating and being the listing specialist. So hired that first prospector and started going down that journey, which has turned into today what is an entire call center that we call Phone Animal.
Right. All right. So let's just scoot back just a little bit because I want to go pick it up from there. When you were doing that, how did you build your skills, and what were you doing as far as calling expireds? And when you did hire this person, how did you train them up?
Yeah. So the first place I built my skills, I went to a seminar in Keller Williams that we call BOLD. I went to and that's where I learned your basic expired for sale by owner scripts, learned how to go and find that data and make those calls. And then I hired a coach. I hired a coach probably not more than 9 months into the business. I went ahead and started paying $1,000 a month.
Nice.
To, and honestly, I was paying a coach to do what you can do at boot camps, at training seminars. I wanted the fast track. I wanted somebody to sit there every week and literally teach me the best of the best scripts, role play with me, help me navigate through it, and hold me accountable, make me come out and use those scripts. And it worked really, really well. Honestly, I just mastered objection handlers. As I would go on appointments, I'd come back and he'd say, "What are the objections that are stumping you right now?" And I had a whole list of them. And we would just coaching call and work through it. So coaching's been a huge thing for me. And honestly, just having that accountability on a weekly basis has been massive. I've had a coach basically since I started.
Nice.
So what happened was my very first calling assistant that I ever hired was actually an agent in my market center who here in Austin, Texas, who was thinking about getting out of the business. So this agent had been through the same boot camps with me. He had been to Bold multiple times. He'd gone through a lot of the same training. In fact, this agent had probably better skills than I did on the phones. In my opinion, he was better. He was more charismatic. He went for closes that sometimes I didn't go for. And yet my business, I was in a place where I needed help, and he was in a place where he was exiting the industry. And the difference had been where I had been consistent day in and day out for years. His consistency or his inconsistency had shown up quite often. He was all over the place, and so I had thousands and thousands of leads that I needed to keep following up with, and I was committed to generating more every day. And he had an empty pipeline, and so he was willing to come and work for me. And so because I agreed to pay him now. In real estate, we don't get paid for 6 months or 9 months after we do, right? So he was in a place where he wanted to get paid today for the work he did today. So I said, well, don't leave the real estate industry. You've already got the skills. Stay in the industry. Just come work for me and in this role. And so I actually didn't have to train him at first. But what happened was it was a short-term thing, and as he got money, he wanted to go back out into the industry and be a real estate agent. So it was time to buckle down and make a full, true hire and train that person from scratch. So what I did was I went out and I recruited someone from outside the real estate industry, somebody who had sales background, inside sales background in the technology world, in the technology industry here in Austin, Texas. So they had already had that phone experience. They kind of knew what it was like to be a kind of a phone banger, somebody who's just day in and day out crushing the phones. And so I had to come in and teach them real estate scripts. And I had to, help them understand how to identify what made a qualified seller versus an unqualified seller, and what we wanted to put in the pipeline, and what we wanted to set appointments for. So what we did was I did a kind of a strategy that I learned through a course called Recruit Select. Recruit Select is a course that I actually teach, and it's about finding and hiring talent. And the second stage of that class is called Action Training. And Action Training, what we learn is there's a way to effectively train people, and it's I do it, we do it, they do it. So what we do is we spend 30 days and I do it. So I'm gonna do the prospecting, and you're gonna stand next to me all day long with a notepad, and you're gonna write notes, but you're gonna basically shut up. You're basically not gonna say anything. You're just gonna watch and listen and observe. And what I did was, in between calls, I'm coaching and he's writing notes, and I'm saying, well, this is why I said this, or this is why I didn't say that, and he's coaching and he's writing notes as we go. And then we did 30 days of we do it. We did 30 days where he jumped on the phones and we called right next to each other. So I'd listen to his calls and he'd listen to mine, and I would take notes on what I needed to coach him on later, and he'd take notes on questions he wanted to ask me about later. And we do it for 30 days. And then we transitioned into the final 30 days, in which case it was they do it. And that was where he sat there and he prospected for 30 days, and I shut up. And I just stood there and took notes, and we talked in between calls, and we had meetings every week, and we'd sit down and talk about, we'd sit down and have coaching segments on where he could improve and how he could get better. But it was an effective 30, 60, 90 days, I do it, we do it, they do it. And where I really poured into that person. And by pouring into that one person, what happened was got him going so well that he was able to do I do it, we do it, they do it with the next 3 or 4 people that came through. So by me buckling down and spending that time, where so many times we want to skip it because we just want to move so fast, and I'm guilty of that myself in so many scenarios. So basically what I did was because I spent the appropriate time up front, it actually saved me time in the long run, and I sped up because I didn't have to go train the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th calling assistant that came through. So it worked really, really well. It was very, very effective.
Yeah,
Tim, let's talk.
I was just going to say that's a pretty intense shadow training program, and it sounds like it paid off big because you were able to step back, take some steps back, and really get in there and help and give all that effort. That it really paid off. Sounds great.
Yeah. You know, Jeff, I wish I could say that I've done it for every hire, and there's no question I haven't done it that way for every hire, and yet I've done it twice really, really effectively, and it's changed my life both times. That was the first time, and the second time was when I hired a listing specialist. I decided that it was time to get out of production, and this was the final role that I was that I was personally in production on, and it was a very, very important role. And it actually took me 4 months. I hoped it would only take me 3, but it took me 4 months. But we effectively did the same thing with a listing agent. I do it, we do it, they do it. And I got to tell you, I stepped out 2.5 years ago and never stepped back in. I never had to step back into that role and never will. So I got to say, it's an effective way to train. You can slow down to speed up.
Awesome. Hey, Frank, what were you going to ask when I really interrupted you?
That's all right, man. Now, the biggest question is, I want to clarify that you hired a dedicated outbound prospector making cold calls to neighborhoods, expireds, whatever, to get listing appointments. This isn't someone following up on buyer leads, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And in fact, Frank, what happened was it evolved into that, though. What happened was that first, all the need was for outbound prospecting. All the buyer leads were going to the buyer agent. However, it turned into the fact that this individual was actually sitting in. It was a professionally trained salesperson who is sitting in front of the computer at the office all day, every day, and my agent my buyer's agent at the time was missing leads, was being inconsistent with follow-up times and all that. And so we actually started funneling leads to this, even though it was an outbound and an OSA, making outbound calls. We actually started funneling leads to him and having him handle inbound leads for a while as well, until we had enough leads where it made sense to hire both inbound and outbound. But at the beginning stages of my business, we only had maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 leads a day coming through. So it didn't really make sense to have a dedicated inside sales associate at that time.
Sure.
So we were able to double down after a little bit. But their primary job, 95% of what they did, was just make outbound calls.
All right. So Tim, you got this first person going, and they started calling expireds, and when they were caught up with expireds, maybe some FSBOs and just listed, just sold, circle prospecting. How many appointments and then you were the listing agent, so he was setting appointments for you, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then at that point, it was the 2 of you and maybe an assistant and a buyer's agent?
Yeah, we had two admin, 1 buyer's agent, and him and myself.
Okay. And how many appointments was this person setting for you a week, and how many listings a month were you taking back when, after he got ramped up?
Yeah. So at the time he was setting anywhere from 1 to 2 appointments a day. So he was setting anywhere from 5 to 10 listing appointments a week. So anywhere from 20 to 40 a month. And I was in the ballpark. The most listings I ever took as an individual producer was 29. So I probably averaged taking somewhere in the range of 15 to 20, somewhere in that range. So the appointments weren't always super qualified. But what happened was we made a mistake. We made a mistake, Jeff, and that mistake was we based the metrics that we expected for all ISAs off of what that first ISA could do. And the reason that was a mistake was because that first ISA got to work all the low-hanging fruit, right?
Sure.
All the new expireds, the new for sale by owners, they got to work all of the follow-up that I had been putting in the pipeline for the last 3.5 years, right?
Right, okay.
So they've got this massive amount of leads to follow up with. They've got this massive amount of low-hanging fruit, and then we started bringing in other ISAs and having them calling neighborhoods and old expireds. But we expected 2 appointments a day as the standard, and that was a wrong expectation. And so we learned that the more calling assistants you have in one market, the less that each of them are going to be able to actually do, because you run out of that low-hanging fruit. And also you run out of pipeline that you're following up with. So if they're focused on generating new pipeline, they could set 2 appointments a day all day long. You know, if you said, Jeff, if you hired me and told me to come into your office, and which I would gladly do with the view in the background, by the way. but if you had me come in and said, your goal, here's a list of phone numbers, your goal is to set 2 appointments a day, I guarantee you on day 1, I could set you 2 appointments, because there are so many sellers out there that are more than willing to meet with a homeowner to have them come in, and so they can show the new granite they put in and the
sure
cabinets.
The unqualified ones too.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, you can't force an ISA to just magically find 2 qualified sellers in a day from a random lead list. So we learned that as you scale it, the expectations need to change.
I got a question that now that you're talking about scaling and efficiency. So you got the first one, and he's following up on the low-hanging fruit, calling the low-hanging fruit, and doing follow-up. The new ones, they're looking for new opportunities. Are they following up on those as well? Are they creating these opportunities and then following up on them? Or do they shift to somebody else to follow up with those?
Yeah, that's a really good question. At the beginning stages of my business, they were doing both. They were generating the opportunity, they were assigning it to themselves, and then they were following up in the future. So it wasn't really a problem at first, because they had nobody to follow up with. So they spent 99% of their day generating new leads. But I came back into the office, 9 months into their time with us, and all of a sudden what I realized was they were actually spending almost half their day following up with leads from all the leads they had gotten 6 months prior. And it really, really was starting to bother me, because I was paying them a base salary, and the reason I was paying them a base salary was to keep the pipeline building, right?
Sure.
And what happened was I had this group of really talented agents that had all of a sudden become like victims. They had all of a sudden, they were sitting there, and they come in the office and they're twiddling their thumbs and they're going, well, if the ISAs could just work harder and move faster and set more appointments, then we'd have something to do, but we really don't have anything to do, so we're just kind of sitting here waiting. And it kind of had that mentality for a little while. And I sat back and I thought, this isn't right. I've got my most talented people sitting here just waiting, and they don't have the ability to do, they have the ability to go out and do whatever, but I've got all these leads that my ISAs are spending half their days calling and not even getting to all of them, when my agents could be calling those. So what we did was we said, I took a step back and I decided, I had previously had it set up where I was only going to bonus the ISA if the ISA set the appointment. And so what I decided was to change the way we did it. And I said, from now on, if the ISA sourced the lead, then they're going to get paid. Whether they set the appointment or not, I don't care.
Sure.
And then what I did was I said, okay, all the ISA's leads are all going to go into one funnel. They're not going to be assigned to the ISAs individually. They're just going to be in one community account that anyone can call whenever they want. Anyone can access it. And so all of a sudden now the agents were able to jump on all that follow-up, and they were more than happy to do it. So the first agent in the office got to call through it the first time. The second agent got to call through it the second time. And they were lining up to make those calls, and they were more than happy to do it. And so what happened was the ISAs, they saw that and they said, well, then I would rather spend all my time filling in the pipeline, because now I can double down my opportunity to make bonuses, and I'm good to go. And so by making that change, things actually started running a lot smoother. In fact, the appointment gone on percentage, it over doubled. It didn't quite triple, but it over doubled the appointment gone on percentage, because now the agents are setting the appointments for themselves. So we almost went full circle with the program and just had the ISAs be the lead generating machine that continues making the pipeline bigger and bigger.
So if I get this straight, you got the ISAs generating the leads, filling up the funnel, then the agents following up and qualifying them further to book the appointment, correct?
Correct.
And then who do you, like, let's say the ISA talks to a lead and they say, hey, you know what, we're going to sell, but we're going to sell, and I'm just trying to get down to some nitty-gritty because I know there's agents probably wondering this right now, right, or thinking about building a team. So they talk to a seller and say, hey, yeah, we're going to sell our home in 60 days. So that goes in there as a lead that someone's going to sell in 60 days. Do you guys set a follow-up for like half that, 30 days, or how does that work? Is there an actual follow-up date, and then anyone up can follow up, or how does that look?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, the kind of the old tried and true rule of just cutting the time in half. We used to do that. Now we cut it in about 2/3. We do about 2/3. So if they say call me in 3 months, we're going to call them in 2 months. We cut it about 67% of the time. But what we do is we actually set a follow-up date in the CRM, but it's in a general queue that anyone can access. But here's the deal: what we do is each agent has a maximum number of leads that they're allowed to have assigned to them at any given time. And we have a virtual assistant who polices that and makes sure that they're always under a certain amount, right? So we call that person the pipeline police, Jeff. The sheriff's in town and literally coming in to we used to issue citations actually, but we stopped doing that.
That sounds like the MLS, Tim. Come on.
What we started doing is we started automatically just pulling leads. So if an agent had 105 leads, then
Sure.
5 pulled at random. And no agent wants to get 5 leads pulled at random because those could be their best 5.
Right. Yeah.
So now they're incentivized to just keep it to their 100. So every day, what happens is every day they go in and they work the community hopper, and they're having conversations with these follow-ups. And if the seller wants to kick the can down the road another 2 weeks or another month, the agent has the ability to either take the lead and pull it into their own queue and kick back one of their weak leads, or they can just kick the can down the road and leave it in the community hopper for whoever else to get back to 2 weeks from now. They have the option of what they want to do. So what happens is an agent that starts with my team, within a couple of months, they're going to have 100 leads assigned to them. But
Sure.
an agent that's been with me for a year, their 100 is a whole lot different than the new agent's 100. It's the quality because they've been top grading their 100 for a year.
Sure. So okay, that sounds like a great system. So let me ask you another question. Let's say I got a lot of questions.
I do. Hey, Jeff, before we answer the question, I want to kind of bring it down to a little bit more base level for everybody here, because we were talking some serious high-level ISA stuff. All right?
Sure.
Tim, let's go back a little bit, all right, buddy?
Okay.
When you hired your first ISA, your outbound person, what did you pay them, and how did you set the initial compensation structure for outbound?
All right, do you want to hear my mistake, or do you want to hear when I fixed my mistake?
Let's hear the mistake and how you fixed it. This is probably the most
Can you
important thing.
repeat that question again, Frank? I'm sorry. I was writing some of it.
What I want to know is that, when you're at this point in your business and you have to pay this person, how did you initially structure the compensation? I want to hear how you did it. Then tell me the mistake you made and what you learned from it, and what you'd recommend for everybody for their very first outbound, not inbound. Outbound's calling sellers, not responding to buyer leads. Outbound prospector.
For sure. All right. So that very first person that I brought on the team, remember, he needed money today. So I said, look, I've got a win-win for you. You set appointments for me. I'll pay you today. I'll pay you for every appointment you set. So.
Uh-oh. He just froze. He'll come back. Tim.
Tim, you're on a wireless connection, aren't you? Oh boy.
All right. Well, we'll get him back on.
Well, let me just share what I've learned, Jeff, while we're waiting for Tim. I mean, usually you would start a prospector off sometime around $10 to $12 an hour base, and they would work only 6 hours a day. Someone calling for 8 hours is way too much. You're probably working for 6 hours a day. And ideally, in a perfect world, again, this is from what I've heard, is you hire two people. Maybe it's 2 people, 3 hours a day part-time, like 2 college guys or whatever, right? But when you have 2 people there, there's that horizontal accountability for them to kind of get after it together and learn from each other versus just sticking one guy in the corner of your office.
Yeah, there's some synergy.
And you're out, and the energy is not there. I mean, it's a high-energy position to do something like that,
Sure.
Then generally what you do is you bonus them on every appointment kept, not set, kept. And when you go out there, when you're the agent and you go on the appointment, or you call to qualify the appointment, or whatever it is, you go on the appointment, there has to be certain criteria that was met
Sure.
to pay that commission back to the ISA. So what happens is the agent's like, oh, this is a good deal. Let's go ahead and give them $25. So usually it's like $10, $12 an hour, maybe 6 hours a day, maybe you hire 2 people for 3 hours a day, whatever. Ideally, 2 is better. And then you pay them maybe say $25, maybe $50 per appointment that's qualified.
Qualified and kept, not just saying.
Qualified
like
and
he
kept.
said, like he said, you can set appointments, and they're like, yeah, come on out, look at my house. You know,
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
it's gotta be qualified.
So the question really comes down to is, what is a qualified appointment? So let's say I hired this ISA and they're setting me 2 or 3 appointments. Well, I'm going to call these appointments. Let's take it a step back. And again, this is for me knowing Tim, or maybe a little
You
the
do.
audience going.
Yeah.
The first standard is just to pass the lead. So I'd hire somebody and say, all right, you're making calls for 6 hours. Here's your numbers from Cole information, COLE information. You put them on a Mojo dialer, whatever, Vulcan 7, whatever the dialer is. They're crushing the phones. And when they get someone who's interested, that might be interested in selling the house, they just pass the name, or they do a live transfer. They message you on GChat. They say, can you take this call? Then they patch you in as a live transfer while they're on the phone. If they can't do a live transfer, then they just pass the name over to you, and then you call on the name and follow up and see how it is.
Sure.
Makes sense? The highest standard is setting the appointment. Tim, you back with us?
Hey, Tim, you back on?
Yeah, I lost signal. I had to move.
No worries, buddy. We were just talking about things I picked up in the space about,
so we're going to let you
how to compensate. So let's get back to where you're at.
Frank was filling in for you. He was doing a great job.
All right. Thanks.
All right, so where you at?
All right. So essentially, I was compensating this person per appointment gone on, and compensating them per appointment gone on was not in alignment with what I needed. I needed closed deals. I needed listings taken. I needed people who wanted to put their home on the market, and not just people who wanted me to have them out to their home. So upon bringing on a new ISA, what I did was I adjusted the way that I was actually doing it, and I paid that new ISA a base salary. The base salary I paid was about $2,500 a month. $2,500 a month is what I found to be a competitive base salary for other inside sales roles in other industries here in Austin, Texas. So that could differ market by market. That could be completely different in San Diego, California, than it is in Austin, Texas. And so you've got to find out what's competitive in other industries in your market for a base salary, and then also find out what's competitive for the on-target earnings for the role. So on-target earnings is key, because they're not doing the job just for the base; they're doing it for the upside. And so what I found was that 60,000, somewhere between 60 and 80,000, was good on-target earnings for inside sales roles in the tech industry. And so most of these people were being compensated 30 to 35 grand base. They were making 60 to 80 grand when they were succeeding in their role. The outliers were making 6 figures, and the other outliers were simply making their base. So I decided to be competitive. I'm gonna be 30K, and I'm gonna be on the base, and I'm gonna set up a commission structure that can allow them to make another 30K in commissions and bonuses. And essentially, what happened was my average sales price is over $300,000 in Austin. So I decided 5% was all I needed, 5% of the commission, because that's $400 to $500 per deal. That was all I needed to set up a win-win. What I found in other markets, though, with lower average sales prices, is that sometimes they need to creep up to that 10% mark, 10%. And so you just got to be careful when you're paying out 10% or higher in commission to an ISA. You got to be careful about what you're also paying to the agents. You might need to cut down your agent's commission to compensate for that, depending on what you're already paying them. So at the time, I wasn't paying listing agents anything because I was the listing agent, but I was still keeping in mind that eventually I would bring on listing agents, and I needed to make sure that I wasn't overcompensating in any role. And so it was $2,500 a month up front, 5% commission on the back end when a deal closed. So
5% of your take, 5% of the 3% or 2.5% or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure they understand.
Yeah, so $400 to $500 per deal.
Sure.
And what happened was, and I didn't know that this would happen. Well, I wasn't smart enough to think it through up front. So when I went and pitched it, I showed them if you can source X amount of deals per month, here's what you'll be making per month. Well, I didn't think through that it's going to take them 6 months to be sourcing closings, right? Because that's just the nature of our business. When you bring on a buyer's agent, they don't make money on the first month. They don't make money on the second month. So, this role, because it's an entry-level role, it's less risky than being an agent, and there's less upside, right? So being an agent, it's $0 paid up front, but there's major upside. You can make 6 figures in commissions. Being an ISA, we're going to pay you a base, so it's less risky. You'll make $30K or whatever it is, and yet you're going to get capped out, at that 60, 70K mark. You're not going to jump into the 6 figures, at least not anytime soon. And so what happened was I saw my ISAs in the first year make anywhere between 45 and 55,000. And then what happened was in the second year, earnings skyrocketed. Because, it absolutely skyrocketed because they had a year's worth of leads that they had been putting in the pipeline that were converting. So the first year, in January, they made no commission. February, they made no commission. But the second year in January, they were making more commission than they had made in December. Right? They were making the most commission in that first month versus the least commission. So the second year of earnings for an ISA, if they can hang on and hang in there, the second year of earnings far outweighs the first year of earnings.
So Tim, what's the recommended pay that you would start somebody off now? How would you structure that correctly for someone hiring their first outbound prospector?
That's what I would do. Here's what I would do, Frank. I would basically pay 20. I would basically compensate them depending on what market you're in. And what's competitive, somewhere in the range of a $30,000 base salary. Okay, somewhere in that range, 25 to 35K, and then I would compensate them that 5% commission, 5 to 10% commission on the back end. If you've got a really low average price point, you might have to go as high as 10%. Here's the thing: you've got to map it out, and it has to be a win-win. If it's not a win-win, the relationship isn't going to last. So you've got to be able to map it out and see based on what base and what commission and what your average price point is. You've got to map it out. What I do know, what I can tell you is an ISA who comes in from scratch can source you in the first year. They can source you, 30, 40 deals. They're not all going to be listings. Some of them will be the buyers that listed their home and then bought. But they can source 30, 40 deals in the first year. They can source far more than that in the second year. So you want to run your pro forma to make sure that it's going to be a win-win and monitor what your return on investment is, and monitor what they're actually making in their pocket and in what months they're making it. And your return on investment, you don't need to calculate the commissions in that. That's part of your cost of sale. You really only need to calculate in the return on investment. You just calculate how much you're paying on a monthly basis versus what your return is, or how much you pay in a committed monthly basis on an annual run, and what you make.
No, you're totally right, man. This is good stuff. I want to get more simplify to the next step after we'll get to return on investment here in a little bit and how you extrapolate that, and that's a very complicated process long term. You hire this ISA, you pay him $30,000 base plus a small percentage on the upside. This is probably typically a recent college grad, younger. Give me the persona of this individual.
They're a phone animal. That's why we call our business Phone Animal, our call center, because what we did was we started posting ads and we started going around to the colleges, the universities, and talking to our friends and families. And what we decided was we said we're looking for a phone animal, and they go, a phone animal? What's that? We're saying this job, you got to be fierce. You got to be, it's a phone sales job. This isn't like a little bit on the phones and a little bit of other stuff. You're on the phones all day, every day. We wanted to scare people away, because if they didn't get scared away by being a phone animal, then we wanted them. But if they got scared away, it wasn't worth it. They wouldn't last. There are definitely, thousands and thousands of people out there that make a career in phone sales. They make an absolute career in phone sales. That's who we're looking for. And if we're not looking for somebody with experience, we're looking for somebody who's willing to go down that path. Okay. And what we found is, Frank, it's a tough job, and somebody who is on the front end of their career is much more likely to dive in head first than somebody who's on the back end of their careure, right? Or somebody who's in the middle of their career. So we found that guys coming right out of college, right out of school, and it's a competitive role. We found that athletes, especially if you could find college football players, things like that, coming out wanting to get a chance, wanting to get an opportunity in sales. Here's another thing. what we found was people who wanted to have a career in real estate versus people who didn't care, who were just looking for a job, massive difference in what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. Because the people who actually want to have a career in real estate, they're not there just for the paycheck. They're not there just for the competitiveness. They're there to learn. They're there to get better. They're there to upgrade their skills day in and day out.
This is great because this is what someone's looking for in the hire. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Tim. Okay.
All right.
Let's say that someone's like, I gotta hire this person, so I gotta write the ad, I gotta write the post, I gotta send the email out, I gotta write the post on whatever it is. You know, gotta get the word out, right? I'm trying to repel maximally so I can attract maximally in the ad. And I like ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter's great. You can go on there, blast the ad everywhere, funnels the leads into a CRM so you can follow up.
Yep.
Give me the ad so people can copy what you would say in this ad. What would you write down to find that person?
Well, I am seeing if I could pull it up real quick for you, Frank. You give me just a second, I might be able to pull it up for you.
Absolutely. So what other questions? We'll talk about the ad and how you find that person. And then after that, we'll get into a little bit of like the first 100 days and the training. You talked about I do it, we do it, and the training and whatnot, right?
All right. Here. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Share my screen up?
If you can share your screen without screwing up everything too much,
or just read it.
Click the little here, Tim. Click the little green screen share in the upper left. There's a white arrow on it, and
Frank, I'm all over it, baby.
All right, good.
You guys can see it?
I can see myself.
Huh?
Oh, I can see myself. You have to show the.
I can only see Frank.
Now I see Jeff. So now you got to change the window, Tim. You're in the wrong window. So click that and click Word so it shows the Word document.
Maybe we should just read it.
I don't know. We'll see if Tim can do it. I'm going to give him 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Oh, there we go.
All right. So this
there we go. Zoom in, Tim. Zoom in.
Right.
Zoom into the document more.
Frank, you are surpassing my technological skills.
There we go. Good. You got it. You're good to go. You're ready to
We're
rock.
talking, Frankie.
All right, so this is a, I don't know if this is an updated version or not, but it's one I found on my computer, so it's one we've used before. Responsible for developing business opportunity. You know what, Frank? If people request it, we can pass this out. We can share this after the webinar if you'd like.
Okay, got it.
So achieving productivity, appointment setting, revenue targets while responding efficiently to customer inquiries. So this will be if you want them to do inbound and outbound. So we have a couple different versions. Primary duties include outbound calling, email communication, coordination, scheduling of real estate buying and selling opportunities. Pretty basic stuff. Where is it? Job expectations. Be responsible for responding to inbound sales inquiries. Become an expert on evolving Central Texas real estate market. Accurately present the Howell Group's unique value propositions. Maintain rigorous prospecting for new business. Equally rigorous follow-up with your leads and your pipeline. So accurately track and convey your productivity and sales metrics. So we just assign what they're doing. Qualifications, passion for selling, enthusiastic. Demonstrate a record of sales success against a quota in the past. Knowledge and experience in real estate. Ability to communicate effectively.
So Tim, we don't have to go through this whole thing. Just scroll down for it. If someone wants to watch the replay, they can capture the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Here's what we need to do too. If Tim can email me that, I do a replay post on the Real Geeks blog, and I can link that up somewhere to, if you want to post it on your company website or something, or wherever, however you want to handle that. Email that to me. I'll include a link to it from the replay post.
Sounds good. We'll do that. We'll make that happen.
So Tim, after you get this person hired, you put them through the first 100 days of training, and you can probably share that too. But roughly, we talked about I do it, we do it. I do it, we do it, then they do it.
Right.
And at that point, it's like I need a return on investment.
Yeah.
So I want to be as clear as possible. If you're outlaying $2,500 a month, when do you get your money back?
Yeah.
And how much?
Yep. So let's think about it for a second. So $2,500 a month. In month one you're getting back zero. We're just not going to close a deal. It takes 30 days to close a deal if you had one under contract. Minimum. So in month one you're getting back zero. In month two you're getting back zero. In month three, if everything went right, in month three you may close a deal. If everything went right? So chances are month 1, 2, and 3 is actually a loss leader. Just like if you were going to run a direct mail campaign or if you were going to run radio ads, chances are those first 3 months aren't bringing you back a significant return. So what you're doing in month 4 is deals for month 4 you're hoping to get back your investment. Month 4 and 5 is about breaking even, getting your investment back. it's months 5 or 6 through the end of the year that's going to actually bring you that significant return, and that's where your return gets better and better and better. And into the next year, what happens in year 2 is the return is monstrously different than what it was in the first year. So what you have to think about is, in one given year, if I spend $2,500 a month, I'm spending $30,000. So a return on investment, the best return on investments that we know out there, is in that range of a 10x return, right? So a 10x return would put you at $300,000, 10 times your $30,000 investment. So $300,000. So if your average sales price is $300K, then your average commission is $9,000. That would be 33 deals that would need to close for you to have that 10 times return. But what we know is there's a ton of agents out there that build amazing businesses off of 4 and 5x returns. So radio and direct mail campaigns, and so to have a 4 or 5x return, you need to be in that ballpark of 15 or 16 closed deals on that average commission, that average sales price, to have that 4 or 5x return. If you wanted to just simply break even, which nobody wants to do, but you want to monitor your break even, you got to have $30,000 in commissions to break even. Now, here's the thing about that. If you have agents on your team, you've got to take that into account on your break even number. So if you're paying an agent 25% to take listings, let's say, if you're paying them 25%, then you'd actually have to break even. You'd have to actually bring in, what is that, 40,000, because 25% of 40,000 is 10 grand, so you're left with 30K to pay off the investment that you had in the ISA. So 40K on a $9,000 commission, you're looking at about 5 deals, 4 or 5 deals. So really, it only takes you 4 or 5 deals to break even, which should tell you as a business owner that the risk is very low. The risk is very low to going in and hiring this person. It seems like this big risk. I'm going to hire somebody, I'm going to pay them a bunch of money, and yet, if all I have to do is close 4 or 5 deals to make it not a loss, it's definitely worth the upside of potentially, if I can get it right, closing 30 or 40 or 50 deals and having a huge return.
Okay. So what I want to do is if you don't mind me, Jeff, I want to get very precise with the 20 minutes we have left here. There's something very important. I want to get very precise. We have a ton of questions. So
yeah. So let's get precise so we have some time for questions.
I have one last question. This is very important. We'll get to everyone's questions here because there are a lot. Your guys are not setting appointments. They're passing leads.
That's right.
And I mentioned this a little earlier in my little interlude. You need to explain the difference of passing a lead and now why they're not setting an appointment. You got about 5 minutes for that, and then we're going to get into questions, okay?
All right. So I mentioned earlier how our goals were not in alignment when I was originally paying that first ISA per appointment gone on. They weren't in alignment. So I changed the compensation structure, and I said, for every closed deal, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go. But see, I still had them responsible for setting appointments. I gave them a quota. We had them ring the bell when they'd set an appointment. Everyone on the team was high-fiving. Everyone's getting excited when an appointment's set. So even though we're not compensating them directly for an appointment, it's very clear that success in their role still was based off of getting appointments set on a daily and weekly basis. And the challenge was, even though my most experienced ISAs knew very well what an effective appointment was, what a qualified appointment was, they were setting so many appointments that weren't necessary to go on. And here's how you know. All you have to do, Frank, is calculate the number of appointments that you had set in a month and the number of listings you took. If those numbers are so far off that it disgusts you, which it did for me, that's when you got to take a step back and say, something's not right. I mean, 1 month we set 150 listing appointments and we took 30 listings.
Something's not right.
Yeah, it's only 30%. It should be, if it's a good qualified one, you're a good listing agent. It should be 70, 80%.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so here's the thing. It was so crazy that what I also looked at the same time was I realized what I said earlier. My ISAs were spending half their day doing follow-up. And here's another thing. I also learned that that industry-wide, almost 80% of the appointments, qualified appointments set, come from follow-up calls, not from the initial call. All right. So all that being taken into account, I came back together and I said, look, the job of the ISA is to consistently put qualified lead opportunities in the pipeline so that my agents can come in every day and have quality to work, quality that's ready now. So here's the thing, to create that consistency and to scale that consistency, you have to move past the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit only lasts you so long. So now you've got to spend your time on the phones, cold calling neighborhoods, talking to 4 or 5 times as many people as it takes to get that same qualified opportunity. And we wanted our ISAs in that zone full time. We wanted our ISAs just dedicated to that and to bringing consistency into the pipeline day in and day out, and letting our agents focus on the back end, the follow-up. So we base our ISAs success metrics on putting qualified nurtures, we call them nurtures, but qualified seller opportunities into the pipeline for future follow-up, which is then done by the agent.
Got it. Okay. Let's get to questions, Jeff. Sound good, buddy?
I'm going to get a charger for my phone, or for my computer.
All right.
Yeah,
so Tim,
yeah, we definitely need to get some questions going, because how many you got piling up there? A lot, right?
Quite a few. The first big question is going to copy the scripts. So, Jeff, why don't you email me those, or give me those. I'll put them up on Amazon, and then I'll put the links up on the comments here on the Google Plus page. People can check that stuff out. All right?
You want me to email you what? Are you talking to Tim or me?
Or Tim. Tim, just send me a copy of those scripts, whatever you want to get out for everything.
Sounds great.
I'll throw it up on a server afterwards and put
links. Send them to me too, because I want to link everything up from the replay.
Only one of you gets it. I'm not sending it to both of you.
Oh, bullshit.
You're the Jeff. Jeff will take them.
Send them to me. I'm more organized than Tim. I mean, not than Tim, than Frank. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah,
So
send me those, and I'll get it on the replay. Okay.
All right.
All right. We got questions. Calvin asks, the whole licensing thing with ISAs, OSAs, licensing. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple ways we deal with it. First of all, what we've decided is that in our state, in the state of Texas, it's a super gray area to be talking to inbound leads, people that can't call you, especially buyer leads, because whether they're a buyer or a seller, if they contacted you, they're in the real estate market. They're wanting to talk real estate. So sign calls, texts on signs, forced registrations on your website. They're all already looking at properties, at neighborhoods, and they're asking questions that are totally causing the ISA to cross the line. So what we decided is to have the inbound worked by a licensed salesperson in our state, who we don't have to worry about any gray area. And one of the ways that we've been able to work that really well is we've added what we call a junior agent to our team. And a junior agent is essentially an ISA who is, what it is it's an agent who's applying to be on our team, and yet we haven't hired them to be an agent on the team. We let them come in for a 3 to 6 month training period where we're going to pay them as an ISA, and they're going to work some inbound stuff as it comes in, and they're basically on the training grounds to prove themselves to decide if they can be promoted to an agent on our team. And so that's how we're able to get that licensed activity and that those licensed bodies in our office working those leads. So on the outbound side, we found that it's not as necessary, but if you're setting appointments, it is. So if you go back to that appointment setting, you're right back into that gray area where you need to be licensed to be doing that. So we're highlighting these qualified nurture opportunities, and here's the best part. Buyers want to talk about neighborhoods and all that stuff, whether they're buying today or next year. Sellers, if they're not ready to have a listing appointment tomorrow, we found that sellers, they don't want to talk. They're very short, and they'll tell you, look, we want to list. We don't want to list till January. Call us back in January. We'll talk then. Thank you. Bye. Right? So we're basically finding out the quality information, the contact information, their motivation to sell, when they want to actually make the move, all of that. But we're not having to talk about any real estate in that time period. We're just getting the information and then passing it on to an agent.
Yeah, like a human opt-in form for a seller lead.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. After you get the opt-in, the question is, what CRM are you using to manage and then stay in touch with all these people, because you have all these nurtures from your prospectors?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we, on either side, we're putting them into Boomtown, and what we do is we set them all up on alerts so that they're all getting notifications of what's going on in their market. But what we've been working on is we've been working on testing other systems that are less expensive. So we've been working on KW team leads, trying to understand if there's ways to make KW team leads work. Been talking to Jeff Manson about Real Geeks, just trying to figure out what the most cost-effective solution is to scale now that we're looking into expansion, where we can find individual platforms with one user at a time. The bottom line is what you need is two things. You need somewhere where you can schedule a follow-up date, put notes and all that, and you need e-alerts. You need to be able to keep them in touch with what's going on in their neighborhood so that when you follow back up, they've been getting relevant information dripped by you.
And your viral videos, right, Tim?
No, we don't like viral marketing.
No one does. It's a horrible business. Don't talk to those guys. All right, what system did you use to pull phone numbers for your ISAs when leveraging up?
Yep.
And what systems are you using to track the ISA's leads and nurtures before you flip it over into your CRM?
Perfect. So, we've got to roll with the punches as we've been going. So I initially used to pull all the information manually myself. I went to whitepages.com. I went to Realist, the tax records. I mean, I was literally finding this stuff myself, whatever I could find and pull in. I had to spend a couple hours every day doing it. Today, we get to use technology to do it, and we get to pay for that. So a couple of resources. We use Vulcan 7 to pull expireds and FSBOs. We use Coal Resource Directory to get neighborhood data. What we found is having scalable data, enough data where on a daily basis you can be pulling more and more and putting it into your system is actually more relevant and more important than having really, really, really quality data. And the reason I say that is because sometimes those really, really quality resources that you can go to make it really, really hard to scale and get lots of data on a regular basis. They're not set up for it, or maybe it's not the ways that they're getting it is not scalable for themselves. And so we found that even if you go to a company like Coal Resource Directory where the data is not the best out there, because it's unlimited and you can get it in just a couple of seconds, you can grab another couple thousand numbers, we found that that's more effective when you have multiple ISAs making calls.
That's a great insight, Tim.
Yeah.
That's a great insight.
Yeah.
So who are you calling to get that many appointments? Like when you load all these numbers up, like who are these guys calling?
Yeah. So a couple of things, and you asked how we track it. So real quick to answer the first one about how we track it, we've created a web form. You can literally create a Google web form that jumps into Google Sheets. We use Smartsheet, so we created a web form through Smartsheet. And essentially what the ISAs are doing is they're inputting it into the web form, and that way the virtual assistants can take the data on the back end and make sure a couple of things. One, they can make sure everything that gets entered into our CRM is entered in uniformly. It's all the same way so that our agents are getting the correct information they need. And then they can also go back and tell the sales manager or the ISA directly, coach them on how to get more accurate information in the web form next time if it's not coming in correctly. And then secondly, we like to spot check some of the calls. We like to spot check the nurture calls. And so by entering them into the web form first, then we have access to knowing exactly which nurtures to go back and check and listen to if we want to. So it also allows everything to be tracked because now it's assigned to a certain ISA. We know what price point it's at, so we can track it all the way through as the listings taken, and we start paying commissions down the line. And then you asked one more question. What was
just who in the world are they calling, especially in the market now? There's not as many expireds.
Yeah.
You're just pulling numbers of homeowners in neighborhoods?
That's the challenge, is the low-hanging fruit, it's not there like it used to be. And so that's why ISAs, OSAs are even more relevant today. That's why we created Phone Animal, for agents to be able to actually make those calls or have somebody to sit on the phones and make those calls. It takes us 4 or 5 times the number of conversations to get the same quality nurture that it used to take us back in the day when we had all these expireds to call. So it's not you've got to know what you're worth, right? And what's your hourly wage? And what our goal is that the hourly wage of anyone in our real estate office is not to sit on the phone for 4 hours, or I'm sorry, not for 4 hours, but for 45 minutes just to talk to 4 people, and sometimes, or to talk to 20 people and only get 1 qualified nurture. We want our guys in the best place for their skill set and for the amount of money that they make. And sitting on the phone circle prospecting neighborhoods is not always the best use of their time. And yet, it's the #1 way we found to scale lead flow into our pipeline. So by leveraging somebody who doesn't necessarily have a real estate background and skill set, but leveraging that person who's going to sit on the phones and have 25 conversations just to find one quality nurture, that's the value in today's prospecting.
Right.
Here's one quick thought. You may be getting less leads, but with the circle prospecting, there's less competition with those leads because it's not an expired.
100%. Yeah. In fact, there's almost no competition. The expireds, everybody in the market's got them somewhere in their database, and yet these guys, yeah, you are that one random agent that reached out to them.
Yeah, I'm not saying not to call expires. I still think they're great, but the key is there's less of them, but when you get them, there's less competition. So therefore, a higher conversion rate.
Yep, and we start the day, we're going to call low-hanging fruit at the start of the day and work our way to so we start with the best stuff and then we go down to less and less quality lists.
Awesome. Okay, what do you got, Frank?
How many homes a month were you listing and closing before you hired your first ISA? Which this is very important because you were doing very well and you had to master the I before you brought on the we.
Yeah. The year that I hired an ISA, I did 135 sales. So I hired that ISA somewhere in that during that time. I was probably doing I'd say 10 deals a month, somewhere around 10 deals a month. Now maybe 12 deals a month when I brought them on. But what I will say, Frank, is if I could go back, I may have hired one sooner than I did. To be honest, it's all about business is about succeeding through other people, and I didn't really understand that at the time. And I was trying to be the best producer that I could possibly be. I netted $400K the year that I brought in an ISA, and I didn't bring in the ISA until later in the year. So when you think about that, I had the money way prior to bring in an ISA and leverage and buy my time back. So it's all a matter of when you're ready to invest. When's the right time to invest? If you've got the money and you understand the concept, it's probably a good time to invest. So whether you're doing 5 deals a month or 25 deals a month, I would say it's business. It's succeeding through other people.
Got it. And who was your coach when you first started? Who did you coach through?
Through MAPS coaching. I've always had a MAPS coach through Keller Williams, and it's always been, my first year was scripts and dialogues, and I moved on to a new coach my second year. My second year was accountability, making sure I was doing what I needed to be doing. My third year was about helping me think differently, think outside of the box. My fourth year was about succeeding through other people, about hiring, training, leveraging activities. So every year, it's kind of like when I hit a ceiling, I knew I was missing a person, and I was often missing the right coach or consultant to help me break through that ceiling.
When you get your buyer leads, explain how you use viral. How does that integrate to all this to what you're doing? Was a question that was asked by Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So every lead that we get, whether it's a buyer lead, a seller lead, whatever it is, we're pulling them in, and every single month we send over to Viral a new list of all our new emails. We send it over to Viral, and what we're doing is we're sending this. We have two different videos that we create. One video is directed at a homeowner, and one video is directed at somebody who might be thinking about buying a home in the next year or two. And essentially what we're doing with this is we're sending it out, educating them. All we want them to know is that I'm a professional. I'm in the business every day. I'm talking real estate. I'm thinking real estate. I don't need to have a bunch of calls to action. I don't need to be trying to sell them or trying to get them to hire me. I'm assuming that none of them are thinking about right now today. I just want them to always think about Tim Heyl when they think about real estate, and I want to be that educating professional that's doing that. And I got to tell you, I have connected more with my database through viral marketing than any other activity that I've ever done. I see people that I haven't talked to in years out at a restaurant, and they literally come and talk to me about my real estate business like they know what's going on in my real estate business. And I think it's the coolest thing in the world. So I got to say, that is one of the most passive things that we do that works at such a high level.
Cool. I appreciate that, Tim. If you want more information on that, I've done some hangouts with Tim under the Viral name if you're interested.
Hey.
Are your ISAs W-2? Sorry, Jeff.
ISAs are W-2. You can do it either way. You could W-2 them, or you could 1099 them. The problem with 1099ing is it's going to be difficult to expect a certain number of anything in a given time. So what you want to do is you want to pay them per nurture or per lead that they put into the system if you W-2 them. I mean, if you 1099 them, versus a base salary plus commission if you W-2 them.
Yeah, so their contract you pay for the result, of the W-2 you pay for the time.
Yep.
You had a question, Jeff? And then we'll get one.
No, I was gonna say we're probably running up against the hour. So if there's no like huge like awesome question, we should probably start wrapping.
Well, there's one last one.
Yeah, I'm fine. As long as Tim has the time, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, one more question, Tim. This has to do with your phone animal business. I saved it for last. Okay.
Okay.
So for the $3,000 per month, that phone animal generates 50 nurtures per month. Or if someone hires an ISA.
$2,000 a month for $2,000 a month, but you can hire as many as you want. So $2,000 or $4,000 or $6,000. It's whatever you want. But there's no bonuses, no commissions paid out in that model.
Yeah. So whether they hired you or they hired their own person, they got a prospector. They should get 50 qualified nurtures from that. That's your number. How many deals per month would someone could reasonably expect from that?
Yep. So again, it goes back to the same deal. You're looking for a 5 to 10x return on your investment. So phone animal costs $24,000 a year. It's $2,000 a month. So the goal when you look at this is you want to be able to bring in somewhere between $120,000 and $240,000 in commissions on the back end. What we found is we're able to bring in somewhere between 25 and 50 qualified seller nurtures back to the real estate team. And so bringing in 25 to 50, so you're going to bring in somewhere between 300 and 600 qualified seller nurtures in a year. And what we found is that over time, when we pulled all of our numbers together, over time, for every 12 nurtures that we put into our pipeline, we're turning that into a listing. So what we know is you're going to be hitting upwards of 10x return. Whether you do phone animal or you hire somebody in house to do the prospecting themselves, it's all the same thing. It's just putting qualified seller nurtures into your pipeline and
email addresses. You're getting lots of emails too.
Well, so here's the cool thing, Frank. With phone animal is not only are we getting the nurtures, but we're getting what we call soft nurtures, and we're getting emails. So sometimes on some accounts we're able to get hundreds of emails in one given month and dump them right back to the seller. So we don't even talk about that. All we talk about is the nurtures, but all that's gravy, all that's bonus, and all of a sudden you put viral marketing into the mix, that's game over.
Yeah, here's the deal though, because they're asking for return and all that, and not every agent's created equal, because I get that asked all the time.
What's the conversion?
What's the conversion rate on the lead, from lead to deal? And here's the deal.
That's the problem.
The question goes back to the agent. How good a salesperson are you, and how good are you following up? They're going to get you the nurture leads, but it's up to you, and not all agents are created equal. So agents quickly, and I don't know, I'm going to go off on a rant here for a minute. And I've been an agent for 23 years, and I got a big team working my leads, and I can give the same leads to 10 different agents. I get vastly different results. So every agent's differently. You got to follow up on the leads, and it's up to you. You got to work. You get these leads and nurtures. You got to follow up. You can't sit there and say it's not working because you can't follow up and you can't communicate either. You got to do your part, and you got to learn how to follow up, and you've got to learn how to also qualify and all that stuff. Wouldn't you agree, Tim?
Absolutely. I can't agree more with that. So we do have, and this is something Frank coached me on, is because of that, because each agent has different different conversion systems, different skill sets, different commitments to what they're going to actually do. Frank coached me on having a success coach within Phone Animal. And so what we do is everybody who hires Phone Animal is actually assigned a success coach who literally works with you on what you should be doing to follow up with these leads, how you should be working them, holding you accountable to it. And yeah, no, I can't thank you more for that, because I look at my numbers and we were 12-1. 12 nurtures, we were knocking one out of the park. But over time, by the way, not in month 1, not in month 2, not in month 3. This is over time. So we found when I started saying those numbers, I had to take a step back and go, well, maybe everybody won't have these. Maybe some people will have better conversions. I hope so. But the conversion is up to the agent, and we're gonna show you what to do. We're gonna hold you accountable to it. We're gonna coach you on it. But at the end of the day, only you can do it. Nobody can make you do it. Only you can do it. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, I wanted to just bring that up because I get that all the time. They'll say, well, hey, how do these leads convert? I'm like, well, how do you follow up? An internet lead's an internet lead. How are you good at connecting people? Do you follow up? I mean, what are your work habits? What's your skill level? They always want to blame somebody else instead of taking blame for their skill set and what they've worked on in their follow-up stuff. And another thing I would also probably mention, Tim didn't bring this up, but I'm thinking about this. If you are going to reach out to Tim and hire his company, don't reach out to him if you're a newer agent and you don't have a budget, or you're a struggling agent and you're thinking this is the magic pill. You got to have a budget. You're going to be paying so much. It's an investment. So don't waste your time, because it's a waste of everybody's time if you think this is the last-ditch magic pill that's going to help you
Well, Jeff,
excel.
the number 2 question was, where should someone go if they were just starting off? Why don't you tell them where they can go on Keeping It Real to learn those hangouts?
Yeah, on Keeping It Real, there's a bunch of them that we've put together, right?
Yep.
We've done Top Agent Mindset. We've done working scripts, dialogues. Go to Keeping It Real and go to the bottom and even go up 3. One of them was new agent Tom Nickley, how he did 60 deals his first year. But you've got to go, if you're just starting out and you don't have a budget, you should really go to some prospecting schools. I would suggest get a coach. I'm big on coaching and stuff like that, and learn the skills and start doing it every day. But you got to take massive action. You can't just think that you're just going to buy some leads and just work them barely. You got to take massive action and learn the skills to be successful in this business. I've been in the business since '93, and you got to work your ass off to make it happen.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you guys agree?
I'd agree. You wrap it up, Jeff. We're all done.
All right. Well, hey, I want to thank Tim and his daughter Annabelle. It was Annabelle, right?
Annabelle, yeah.
For coming on, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. And Tim was phenomenal. So go ahead and reach out to him if you got a budget and you don't want to handle training yourself.
We'll
Thanks a
post,
lot, Tim.
we'll post those scripts here on the page for you guys, okay?
Yeah, we'll boost those on the replay, and we will send everybody a replay if you go to Keeping It Real. If you already get our emails, don't go opt-in again. But if you want an email of upcoming and replays and all that, we send everybody a replay of all these. Go to Keeping It Real on the right side and opt in. All right, see you later. Aloha, guys.